I had a little bird. Its name was Enza. I opened the window, and influenza. Following the devastation of the First World War, yet another catastrophic loss of life would follow. A deadly and virulent influenza, dubbed the Spanish flu, tore through much of the world, ravaging a still recovering population. It is thought that anywhere from 50 million to 100 million people died from the outbreak, mainly affecting the otherwise healthy and young. In a few short, deadly months, the Spanish flu would kill far more people than were killed in the entire First World War. In today's video, we will cover just what the Spanish flu was, how it spread, and its impact on the world. Generally speaking, influenza or flus are relatively common, usually seasonal viruses that affect millions each year. Symptoms include fever, chills, coughing, headaches, and runny noses, though many of you watching will know all too well. Today, the flu will claim the lives of hundreds of thousands of people each year, usually in the winter. Typically, those who die from the flu will be the elderly or those with underlying health conditions, such as asthma or heart problems. Today, such at-risk people are offered vaccines to help increase their immune response and increase survival rates. The flu is spread mainly by drops of saliva made when people with the flu cough, sneeze, or talk, which if ingested or enters the nose of another person means they too could contract the disease. As well as affecting humans, influenza viruses affect all manner of animals, notably birds and pigs. The influenza virus is highly mutable, meaning it can change how it affects its host and avoid immune responses. However, the changes are slight, meaning a person's immune system can deal with the infection in some way. Nevertheless, the change can sometimes be of such a magnitude that the virus is capable of crossing over from animals to infecting humans. This is known as an antigenic shift, and it is thought that this is what made the Spanish flu so deadly. One theory for the origin of Spanish flu was originally found in a form of avian flu that mutated to be capable of infecting humans. This meant people's immune systems were ill-equipped to deal with a type of virus they had never encountered. Once infected with the Spanish flu, people would exhibit symptoms similar to that of regular influenza: fever, chills, etc. But their severity would depend on which wave one was infected with. The first wave is understood to have struck in the spring of 1918. The first reported outbreak can be traced to the military base Camp Funston in Kansas. Camp Funston was one of the many camps that trained American soldiers who would be sent to Europe to fight in the First World War. Well over 1,000 soldiers were hospitalized by an outbreak of influenza, with 38 dying by March of 1918. From these camps, the disease was able to spread amongst not only the nearby civilian populations, but also to a number of military camps. And when these soldiers were sent to the European theatres of the First World War, they brought with them their deadly virus. Due to much in the way of censorship during the war, the cases appearing in France, Britain, and Germany were not reported on, as to not dampen the morale. Instead, the Spanish media broke stories of deadly flu in neutral Spain, hence the name given to the pandemic. In May of 1918, some 90,000 cases were reported in Spain. All the while, the virus spread through much of the world, carried largely with the mobilization of soldiers. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers felt ill, with a noticeable impact on the war effort. Some sought to attribute the illness to the conditions of trench warfare, rather than it being an illness. The first wave was relatively mild, with not too many more dying than what would be expected in a regular flu. This led many to believe that it was just the regular flu outbreak. However, the second wave would be where the real danger would present. The second wave is thought to have started in August of 1918. It is likely thought to have spread from 3 key large port cities: Freetown, Brest, and Boston. These key ports were vital for troop movements and became the center of the Spanish flu's transmission of the deadliest second wave, with staggering death rates. In October of 2018, some 195,000 people died in the United States alone. Symptoms during the second wave were notably different than typical influenza, meaning cases were often misdiagnosed as cholera or typhoid. Hemorrhaging from mucous membranes in the nose, stomach, and intestine were commonplace, something not usually seen in the seasonal flu. Bleeding from the ears and nose were a striking symptom of those affected. Perhaps even stranger was that these severe cases were seen only in the young, aged between 20 and 40, with pregnant women being the most at-risk group, with mortality rates as high as 71%. Around 85% of the deaths were caused by the viral infection and the damage it caused to the lungs, resulting in respiratory failure. But when doctors examined the bodies of those who died, the autopsies revealed lungs filled with fluid. The alveoli, microscopic air sacs in the lungs, were filled with fluid. As their lungs slowly filled, the patient's skin would turn a grim, bluey-black colour. It became such an omen of death that those who arrived at the hospital with blackened feet were deemed beyond help. The intense autoimmune response of the otherwise fit and healthy could result in the body being overwhelmed. As the white blood cells and fluid produced attempted to deal with the virus in the lung, the patient would succumb before the virus could even be dealt with. It got to the point where people would die in the streets or simply just pass away at home. Sometimes, an entire family claimed. In one striking example, one nurse found a husband dead in the same room where his wife lay with newly born twins. It had been 24 hours since the death and the births. As the war reached its end and demobilized troops returned home, many brought with them the Spanish flu. The deadly flu made its way all around the world, with some of the worst effects seen in India. Bombay was the first city to fall to the disease in June of 1918. It is again thought that troop movements were a key vector of transmission for the disease. It is estimated that as many as 12 million people died of the Spanish flu in India alone, representing around 5% of the population at the time, although some estimates do go even higher, to 18 million. A lackluster monsoon season and the requisition for food for the war effort meant that many in India were going hungry. This only weakened them further. India too suffered a first wave that was relatively mild, followed by the deadly second wave. Again, the age group of 20 to 40 were hit the worst. As millions died, governments sought to mitigate the risk of infection. Mask wearing became mandatory in a number of cities, with many initiatives to encourage the making and wearing of masks set up. The spread of the disease was treated with the utmost seriousness, with police in Chicago instructed to arrest anyone sneezing or coughing in public. Schools were closed, and public events such as dances were prohibited. The quarantining of those even potentially affected became part of everyday life. Such measures were often framed in the way of protecting the troops and working towards the war effort, with those who refused being labelled as a wartime slacker. But not everyone followed these new rules, some seeing such mandates as an infringement on civil liberties. Many objected to the notion of fines or jail time for refusing to wear masks, especially when public officials were caught without masks in public spaces. By the early months of 2019, however, the third wave struck. Whilst less deadly than the second wave, hundreds of thousands were still killed. Great Britain, Spain, Mexico, and the northern European countries were the most affected. Whilst the fourth wave would be milder still, the damage of the Spanish flu was catastrophic. The speed in which most of the deaths occurred, thanks to the second wave, had a huge impact on societies that were already war-weary. As the flu tended to target those of working age, the effect on the economy and productivity of many countries only added to the post-war woes. Birth rates are thought to have plummeted due to the higher rates of miscarriages caused by the virus. It is thought that from a worldwide population of 1.8 billion, that anywhere from 500 million to 1 billion people were affected, with estimates as high as 100 million dead. To put this into context of the 4-year-long First World War, it is thought that some 15 to 22 million people were killed. In less than 1 year, the Spanish flu claimed as many, if not far more. Normally, the flu will boast a mortality rate of less than 0.1%. The Spanish flu had an average worldwide mortality rate of 2.5%. Today, the seasonal flu is just part of the winter seasons, and most of us will never be badly affected. Flu is seen as something that can be lived with, just part of life. After all, we have vaccines, access to antibiotics, and even better sanitation, all to help deal with such seasonal flus. But the Spanish flu pandemic shows us just how deadly a novel virus can be, even one as commonplace as the flu. Many of you will no doubt recall fears of avian or swine flu outbreaks that permeated the media. The signs of a potential antigenic shift are met with fear of a repeat of the 1918 pandemic, and a more recent example has likely already come to mind. And whilst we live in a world with better access to medication and sanitation, these are not things that are available to all. We live in a far more connected world, meaning transition of such illnesses could be all the easier.